challenging times of our lives. As an artist collaboration, we've given shape and depth to some of the most complicated topics of our time, making them easily accessible for those who seek to understand. We've given voice and space to the stories that often go ignored. Please take a moment to consider being a patron, make a donation, or join Rockfin. Thank you.
Lonely spire crawling on the floor. Lonely spider longing for love once more.
Hello.
Hello.
Welcome to another episode of Bookmark.
We have a little friend with us today.
Well, I don't know about little, but it's we have a friend and a neighbor.
Yes.
We have Zig here from a part of Pennsylvania or part of Pittsburgh that we don't live in, but she lives in a specific neighborhood. Pittsburgh. Okay, let me just explain. Pittsburgh is a city of neighborhoods, and it's what it's known for. And I think that's what inspired maybe Mr. Rogers. I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about the. Oh, you wanted to, Julie? Did you want to? Read
Actually,
something?
what I think we should do is start with.
I was
let's let people know who Zig is,
Right.
And play a little bit of the video.
Right. Okay. So let's do that.
Yeah.
In fact, I meant to do that.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. So
There's a cat.
Yeah. No, hang on a second.
I just saw that guy this morning.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Share and play.
Yeah, I've got a good shot of him here.
Well, I mean, I think that's part of what drew me here. You've got this bowl here, you know. We are living in the holler for sure. It's almost like having an invisibility cloak from Harry Potter or something, where you're just standing right in the middle of everything, but everybody just passes you by. Living down here is like living in the country in the city.
The Run is a small community that is technically a part of Greenfield. It was established when Carpatho-Russian immigrants came to Pittsburgh to work in the mills. Almost the entirety of the Run sits down in this little valley between Greenfield, Shenley Park, and South Oakland. If you're like me, you've driven past the Run on 376 and wondered what the hell that little neighborhood was, and how do you get down there?
I remember being a kid and being in the car driving down the parkway and seeing what I now know as Naylor Street and thinking, whoa, I wonder what neighborhood that is, but I never knew. And it was, I mean, we lived right up the hill in Squirrel Hill, but I never knew this neighborhood was here.
Okay. All right. Great. So stop sharing. Stop sharing, JP.
There we go.
There we go.
So
that's a nice video.
that is a really good video that he
Yeah.
did.
Dean Bogg is amazing.
Yeah.
Shout out to Dean.
Yeah. Thanks for letting us use a portion of
Thanks, Dean.
your video for this, Dean. Thanks a lot. So you think you've been really vocal about some of the projects and the partnerships that have been going on in Pittsburgh in general, but specifically you're concerned about some of the changes that the Run might be experiencing as a result of these partnerships. On July 12th, you addressed the council members in Pittsburgh, and I'd like to read just the last statement of your address to them, and then we'll talk more about what's been going on. So listen to Zig. Council members, the vast majority of your constituents have had less than 1 week to review and understand Mayor Peduto's proposed edict, and some may still not even know it exists or that it's about to be put to a vote. We've had 3 minutes each at 2 public meetings to respond. This process cannot truthfully be called public engagement. That's why I'm again asking the city council to stop the vote on this $335 million resolution plan and invest in Pittsburghers' needs with their direct input. Okay.
That doesn't seem like too much to ask, does it?
Right?
Well, now this was just pretty recently that you
Yes.
spoke. Now, where was this? This was at the county building?
No, well, not physically.
Oh, right.
It used to be.
It's a Zoom call? or
It's a
something?
Zoom call. Yeah, they have these. They have the city council meetings on Zoom now, and I believe they do stream them live. And I think there's an archive where you can go back and see them. But so yeah, it's different. It's a little different. Like I said, so I guess it's pretty common where you have 3 minutes to say what you're going to say, and that hasn't changed. It was like that before, and I did that when I actually attended these meetings in person before. But now, instead of being at this podium and having a little timer in front of you, and they tell you, when you're done, hey, okay, you have to go, and then they sort of have to deal with you as a physical human being.
Right. Yeah.
Now it's like it's like the Gong Show, except instead of having any physical removal from the stage, it's just you get cut off.
Right.
And the guy reading the names, calling the names, just says in a very bland voice, "Thank you. Next speaker, please."
Wow.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, fortunately,
Wow.
I would say about a third of the people in that meeting got cut off. They didn't make the cutoff. I sort of am in an old hand at it at this point, and I know exactly how long my speechifying has to be before I have to, rule of thumb. I've found that it is like a 12-point Times New Roman font and 1 page. And if you are pretty quick and you don't go off on a tangent or get distracted, and you just read your stuff, then that's how I do it. Some people like to just talk and be more extemporaneous, but
Right.
that's not me. Like I have to write all my stuff out.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people feel that way too, and
Right.
I would even need cards myself. I think.
Oh, yeah.
Even though we do what we do, it's still, once you get in that moment, if you're not used to speaking in public about something that you're passionate about, a lot of times you will need those references. And I guess that's why politicians who are the way they are. I don't know. So let's give our audience like a thumbnail of what it is, why you're speaking at City Hall or on Zoom
Oh,
for
okay.
City Hall.
Yeah.
And obviously it's about the neighborhood that we saw the little video on, and that neighborhood's called The Run, to remind everybody. So give us an idea of what it's like in The Run, how it contrasts with other neighborhoods that you know of in Pittsburgh. And then we can get into like what's going on, like why the city is focusing its attention on The Run.
Oh, sure. Well, so yeah, I definitely want to talk about all that stuff. But so the purpose of that particular speech was a little bit different. It was somewhat broader. So Pittsburgh got $335 million from the American Rescue Plan, and all this money. And the outgoing mayor, Bill Peduto, sort of decided how all of it was going to be spent already. And some of it was to keep people in their jobs, city employees. Okay, sure. But he basically decided how the whole kit and caboodle was going to be spent. So hopefully there will be some movement on that other than keeping people's jobs. So the tie into my neighborhood a little bit, is one of the things they deemed that Peduto deemed was going to get this money is an infrastructure project that I've been advocating for years. And actually there was like the bulk of that particular statement I made was, I've been advocating for this for years, but this should have been funded already. And I don't think that it should be funded at the expense of Like, this is supposed to be a COVID relief bill and to help people who are affected by COVID, and they're giving us a new sidewalk, which we desperately need, but I don't really see how that's directly going to help anybody stay in their apartment or.
Well, we've noticed that throughout the Pittsburgh and this area as well. There was some COVID-19 relief fund money that was being spent in the main drag of our little area, and I've still yet to see the results of that. But apparently it had to do with paving sidewalks and doing things of that nature. I know downtown Pittsburgh received all kinds of money for bike lanes and like raised bike paths and they fixed all that up downtown, but the bike infrastructure between where I live and downtown is horrid. And I
Yep.
I
know.
took a video of it and tweeted it out to the mayor and to the local bike group, Bike PGH, and it of course it didn't do anything, but it was enough to I wanted them to know, thank you for spending that money downtown and not where other places elsewhere that it's needed.
No, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
I mean, I really considered riding over here, but I didn't want to. I mean, I've been keeping a closer eye on it, and it is really ridiculous. I mean, and the crazy thing is, there are signs that say share the road, and they have pictures of the cyclist guy in the car, but there's no way you can share that road.
No, you can't.
It's too narrow.
Yeah, no, I stay on the sidewalk.
And then sometimes there's no sidewalk.
Right.
So
exactly.
what do you do?
Exactly. So so back to the run.
Right.
So
Yeah.
give us an idea of what it's like, and I'm still trying to get my mind around why you were speaking and what was going on there. But let's get an idea of the neighborhood first.
Yeah.
And tell us some of the problems and issues that you're facing there.
So it's an awesome little neighborhood. As you saw, Dean has this way of making everything look magical, but
Yeah, he does.
This little spot really is, I don't think he would mind me telling you this. It wasn't the first video he released, but this is the neighborhood that sort of started the whole neighborhood series he does, because it's just such an awesome neighborhood. And I mean, I'm not taking credit for that because it was here long before I ever got there. I'm actually a relatively recent transplant to there. I grew up in Pittsburgh, but I just moved down there a few years ago, and I fell in love with the place. I mean, who wouldn't? And then I sort of got sucked into this whole thing because I saw and heard about what they were planning to do to it. And it's not really to benefit any of the people who live there now. So the problems we're facing, they're sort of twofold. One is this road through not just our neighborhood, but a public park and another neighborhood called Panther Hollow that's at the other end of the park. They want to put this road through what is now a bike lane in a public park, and use it for, originally it was going to be autonomous shuttles. Now that idea sort of got shot down, and now we have the head of the Department of Mobility and Infrastructure saying there's no such thing as autonomous vehicles. So that's off the table for a little bit, but the private company who's going to run these things is now touting that they're going to be human operated, but we'll see how long that works. Sorry.
Yeah,
then the other facet of it is the flooding. So our neighborhood gets flooded really bad. It's in Dean Boggs' video, and there's other things you can see about it, but sometimes every year, sometimes every few years, we get really deep floods. And the thing about these floods is that it's not just water. We're in the holler. Like I said, we're in a bowl, and it's where all the water from all the like the sewage system comes before it dumps out into the Monongahela River. And so we have what they call it's actually an illegal, I learned, combined sewer overflow, where it's like the storm water and the sewer water are just mixing together, and sometimes it backs up when there's too much water in too short a period of time. And what happens is at the bottom of my street, like on the main drag there where the businesses are, the water just comes right up out of the why am I blanking on that word? Well, sometimes the manhole covers explode.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Yeah.
But it also comes out of the sewer grates, and it just turns into this. It actually doesn't look as deep as it really is. You can't really, like, you just sort of see this lake, and it doesn't look like it would necessarily be that deep. But you know, when you see a car drive through it, or when you look at something for scale, like it comes up to the top of the garbage can down on the corner.
Right. Right.
It almost, you know,
That's
like,
pretty high. That's
yeah.
like waist deep.
yeah.
There's a video on the Junction Coalition Facebook page.
Yeah, I was
that
looking
shows-
for it.
It's there. You want to try
Okay.
to find
Yeah,
it?
let me try to
Sure.
find
So
it.
there's
Yeah.
the Facebook page right there, the Junction Coalition Facebook page.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
third
Hang on.
tab over.
Okay. Yeah. Let me share this.
I would love for people to see what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
Because the
Yeah.
visuals are so
It's pretty crazy.
yeah.
Okay. So,
Oh, you'd have to just log in, I guess, right?
why are we?
Yeah, just go there, and then
okay.
you might have to put in a different password, but we'll see. It might work.
I hate Facebook.
Yeah.
Everybody hates Facebook. Sorry,
So-
Facebook.
It's KP.
Yeah. Thank you for the prompt.
Giving
Yeah.
your
I know.
password. Okay.
Okay. So.
Okay.
All
So
right.
here we are, and then you can go to videos probably.
Oh, we're still a record label.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I thought was interesting.
I did that. And then I abandoned the page, and I guess nobody.
And here we go. This is the flooding problem.
Wow.
That is a great video.
Yeah. Let me come back to us here. Stop sharing. Okay. There we are.
There we are.
Okay.
Here we are.
That
Wow.
was a really good video.
Yeah. So that kind of shows everybody like what's going on there.
That's what happens.
This seems like kind of, and I was, when we were talking before, it seems like, you know, this is sort of a microcosm of what's going on in a lot of places. I mean, there's flooding that takes place all over Pittsburgh, you know, when the rains come. You know, like downtown, there's one area that people can't park in.
Yep.
When it gets really,
They call
you
all
know?
these places, they call everything the bathtub. Everywhere it floods, they call it the bathtub. And we have a lot of bathtubs.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
and I think that's the case all over the country, and you know, but so back to like what's going on with your particular situation now. You know, apparently the city is like shrugging its shoulders and not really caring much.
Well, for the longest time they did. But then, like that video said, that little bit of footage you saw in the video where the guy was on top of his car, so there was a guy and his son. This was in 2016. This was actually a flood that I was not there for. But one of my neighbors got footage of this guy and his son. They were driving through, and it just came down so fast they thought they could get through. But the car was submerged, and they climbed out their sunroof, and they
Wow.
actually had the fire department had to come out and rescue them from the top of their car.
Oh my God. That's
yeah.
like Katrina
Yeah.
type stuff.
So
Yeah.
after that,
Yeah.
so now at this point, the road, the Mont Oakland connector, as I not so fondly refer to it, the MOC.
Mhm.
It's been called a lot of other things, but that's just the one that stuck, and we sort of made it stick because the project is toxic. But so the MOC was already fully in discussion, and people were, and then this flood happened, and like we've been saying this whole time, why are you trying to do this in our neighborhood when we have these major flooding issues?
Right.
Um,
Can you
Yeah, so let's back up.
tell
and
people
talk-
what the MOC is? Just
the
for-
Mont Oakland connector. That's the what I was talking about with the
right.
the shuttle. The shuttle.
Autonomous
Yeah.
shuttle.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot of things that are happening in
Yes.
this one place. So let's tick them off. So we've got a flooding problem. Okay.
Mhm.
With sewage.
With sewage, awesome. And then this connector, and then what else is going on?
Well, I mean, this is so that's, and so then, I mean, this is related to the connector.
Okay.
Some of my neighbors got letters from the city referencing eminent domain.
Mhm.
It wasn't like saying get out of your house, but it was saying you must allow people on your property to survey the property because they want to do construction on this bridge that's right over. Well,
Right.
you probably saw it in the video.
Yeah.
There are a lot of bridges. There are lots of structures sort of overhead in that neighborhood,
Mhm.
and that it truly is kind of falling apart and it needs repair. But if they decide they want to tear the whole thing down and widen it to accommodate this shuttle, then they can just kick my neighbors out, and
Mhm.
we think that's what's going to happen.
Right.
Okay.
Another thing, this is sort of an ancillary issue, but there's a railroad that goes through there that carries God knows what on these cars. And there's really no plan for what happens if the train derails. We found that out because it derailed in Hazelwood a few years ago, and people were quoted in the newspaper saying like, wow, thank goodness there was nothing on those cars. And we have 376 over top of us,
Right.
raining concrete chunks on our playground
Wow.
and our basketball
Oh,
court.
that's
So
awesome.
376 is a highway for
Yeah.
Right.
for our listeners who aren't familiar with Pittsburgh.
Right. So,
So can I talk about the autonomous tram for 1 minute?
Sure.
sure.
This is for the University of Pittsburgh
And CMU.
and Carnegie Mellon University.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the what is that called? The mono.
The Mont Oakland connector.
So that's what that is.
Mhm.
The
That's what they
MOC
call it. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Or they call it the Mont Oakland Mobility Project.
right.
They've called
Okay.
it a lot of different things, but
So what we have here, if you don't mind me just kind of
sure, yeah, sum
you
it
know,
up.
condensing it a little bit.
Mhm.
So the mobility project, what's it called again?
The Mont Oakland connector, or MOC.
The MOC, and then there's this project mobility. It's another term you just.
It's the same. It's the same thing. The Mont Oakland Mobility Project.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Mont Oakland Mobility Project, there's kind of like, it feels like there's no there. Like there's no public input on this project. Is that,
No.
there's
not
no
really,
public
no.
input on this project?
3 minutes
It's-
of time.
It's,
Well,
it's,
yeah.
it's surprise. We're going to put a train through your neighborhood and it could possibly unhouse your neighbors.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so my neighbors learned about it in a Pittsburgh Post-Gazette article after they had already applied for the grant
Okay.
to get
Wow, okay.
Right.
So the city
But-
had already applied for the
it.
grant.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
So-
Well, actually, it was a public-private partnership.
There you go. Okay. So this is where we're getting to the meat of this
Right.
conversation. But another thing too is that, we live in Pittsburgh. We live in the Pittsburgh area. We go to the neighborhood where Carnegie Mellon University and the University of Pittsburgh are located, which is a neighborhood called Oakland.
Right.
And we see private shuttles for the students and the staff and the doctors and all the people. We see them there anyway. So why do they need yet another third or even fourth mode of transportation through your specific little neighborhood that is already being flooded and needs so much care and infrastructure support. Why do we need a transit system there when they already have shuttles dedicated to them? And
Well, there is a reason.
okay,
So
what's
there's
the reason they gave?
So there's this development that is owned by a company called, well, it's it's Almano Partners, which is 3 different foundations, and they own land. They're supposed to be like philanthropic organizations, but they're in real estate for whatever reason, and they want to develop that land, and they want a direct connection for the clientele, I guess they're trying to attract. Like the universities want to basically have a second campus there, and they want to lure developers there by saying, we have this super futuristic tram, or some like this gimmicky thing, and they're giving them a direct connection between Oakland, and our neighborhood is just in the way. We're to them, they actually said in one of their documents we found, they actually said that one of the obstacles to economic growth in this area is that there's so little space available so the fact that there are public parks and that there are residential areas there that people already live in, those are barriers to economic development for them.
I see. Okay. So blame the residents of the city for being in the way of economic development. Now, I do know, and I think that this is what you're talking about, down closer to the river. So your neighborhood is between Oakland, where the universities are, and down near what I believe is 2nd Street.
2nd Avenue.
Avenue. And after 2nd Avenue is a brownfield, which looks like it used to be steel mills.
Yes, it was. It was J&L.
Okay, steel mills that ran along the riverside, the riverfront.
Right.
And that is the Monongahela River?
Yes.
Okay. So I've been seeing corporate and other types of development along there. And is that the area that they're talking about? Okay, so they're talking about putting in these university, like a university campus that sounds more like it's like you were saying, public-private partnership, but it's like a corporate campus with the university kind of tied into it for some sort of future developments coming out of the university and into the private sector.
Yes.
Is that the idea?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So there, but basically your neighborhood is kind of in the way, and what they want to do is put in this tram or some sort of like fix up the road somehow in order to get people from A to B without dealing with the locals.
Right. Well, and they say the locals can ride it, but
yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And they say I thought it was pretty funny because, they got all kinds of pushback on it. And then when they were finally forced to talk about what they were actually going to put on this road, they were like, it's going to be free to the public for multiple years. And I said, oh, okay. So 2 years. Yeah. That's multiple years. That's more than 1 year.
Yeah.
Right.
And then what about after that? Then what happens?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure that you will not be allowed to be on it any longer.
And the things they were talking to this day, even the ones that are human operated, to this day, the vehicles they're talking about hold like 8 or 9 people on one of them. And so they want to do all this. They want to go put everybody through all this and spend all this money for these little like minivan sized things that hold 8 or 9 people.
Right.
And they know it's not, for their like anticipated build out, they know it's not going to be enough, but they're not talking about the fact that that's just the beginning. They're like, what are you so upset about? It's just a little, it's
just a little thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And, and as we were talking about the other day, I've been involved with design in a different kind of manner, different type of design, but it's always the same. These meetings always go the same way. And that is that the design proposal will be put in front of the stakeholders and people who have no concept of what design is will have a say in the final product. And oftentimes there will be a flaw or there will be a problem that needs to get corrected because the design isn't quite going to work, fully functionally, or it won't be what it could be if this one thing was fixed. And they always say, "Oh, well, we'll come back to that.
And they
We'll
never
come back to that and fix that in another revert. Oh my God.
another version of it.
Yeah, a revision. That's
Revision,
another
right.
revision of it, or another, come back to it, and it never gets fixed. It never does. And it sounds like it's the same kind of thing. Like, well,
Yeah.
this is what we're going to do, and but it's sort of like in reverse. Like it's almost the opposite of that. It's like, well, this is what we're going to do, but we're going to fix it later, and then they actually will fix it, but not in the way that you expected it to be.
Well, that's kind of funny what you say, because it makes me think of the public meetings we did have where they, I mean, well after the stakeholder meetings, I'm sure, that like some of these, meetings, we had to get through right to know requests, the notes from those meetings, but the ones they actually, had us in were where they were showing us these illustrations, these like pretty, like artist renderings of how it's supposed to look. And they were showing it with these mature trees after they already told us they were going to rip out all these trees. And they were showing trees that were fully mature. And we were like, so this is in 30 years, but okay, how's it going to look, when you're done with it?
Right.
Right.
And
Right.
they were just, and they wouldn't share the actual technical information. Not that most of us would be able to comprehend it, but there are people who do know what they're talking about, who've come out of the woodwork and who have said to us, you're right, this is this is ridiculous. And they're not really addressing the problems. They got $41 million to fix the flooding for this PWSA project, and they're only actually spending 16 million of it. They've tried to like pad the budget numbers since that first presentation where they showed the budget and we called them out on it. And so they're padding it with different things and trying to make it like they realize their mistake. But, and that park area, not that it couldn't use some work. And I understand that like some of these experts have told me, well, that's low hanging fruit because it's public land and we don't have to deal with property owners to do this. But that's only where 20% of the flooding is coming from.
So is that part of Shenley Park that you're
Yeah.
referring to? Okay,
Yeah.
so this is a big city park. It's sort of like Golden Gate Park or Central Park. Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, Central Park in New York. It's sort of like the big city park where we've recorded some things there.
Right. So
and-
I'd like to just break in for a minute and let people know who are just joining us that we're talking to our friend Zig, who lives in Pittsburgh. And we're talking about the public-private partnership overreach that the goal is to, in the name of progress, decimate her neighborhood, the neighborhood where she lives. And so she's been on the front lines, basically, attending all of the municipal meetings, making statements in just the 3-minute increments, attending the stakeholder meetings as well, so that she's aware of, what sort of budgets are, being presented to fund these projects, and really digging deep. And I think that this is what is missing, at least in the United States, is this, this taking the responsibility and moving into these environments. Maybe it's a little boring. Maybe it's not as exciting as, marching on the street, holding a sign, but talking to people like municipal leaders and addressing stakeholders and corporate interests, you have to do that, because you have to confront what they're doing to your own neighborhoods, like what's happening in your own backyard. And these are incremental changes that are literally stripping away the fabric of our country. We have witnessed various activists throughout the years make excellent progress as they, put themselves out there for the benefit of their small communities. And that's exactly what Zig is doing. That's why this platform, which begins with the concept of class war and this idea of class war, that's why it was so important we bring her on to show you, like JP said earlier, a microcosm of what's happening in our country and then throughout the world. And so I would like to ask you, what's been the Pittsburgh media's response to your activism?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question because um, it has, I feel like persistence has somewhat paid off. In the beginning, I mean, I shouldn't say the beginning because I sort of came in midstream, but in the beginning of my experience, they were painting us as backward rubes who were afraid of change and progress. And they're still sort of doing that to some degree. But that was the first tactic. But then, enough people got involved, and it wasn't just our neighborhood. There are people from all over the city who are concerned about this. And I mean, transit organizations got involved because this undercuts public transit and all kinds of issues. So then, it turned into actually, I'm sad to say this, but there were people who were trying to turn us against our neighbors in Hazelwood. They were trying to tell everybody, or like put out the message that the people in Hazelwood really need this and it's going to be great for them. And if you don't want to do this, and I should mention for people who aren't familiar, is that the run is sort of a little bit of everything, but mostly of the white persuasion. Like Dean said, a lot of the families have been there a long time and they're like Eastern European descent. And Hazelwood is really, really mixed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm familiar with that neighborhood quite a bit.
And so there's this sort of, they tried to like gin up this sort of racial tension and say that that's what it was about. And that didn't really work either, because there were plenty of people from both neighborhoods. Actually, in a way, it was good because it sort of nudged us to really get serious about really getting together with our neighbors in all these different communities. We actually had a few meetings with people in Hazelwood, people in Panther Hollow, people from up the hill in Greenfield, which technically the run is part of Greenfield, but I think that we're really our own neighborhood, and their community organization like flatly couldn't care less about our what we're going through. So, I mean, there's been talk about seceding from I mean, really, I kind of feel like we have more in common as far as our interests, like what's going on down at the bottom of the hill with our neighbors in Hazelwood. So we actually deal with them a lot more. But anyway, and so now they're kind of back to, baseless fears and being NIMBYs. The NIMBY thing is a big thing.
What's the acronym for that?
Not in my backyard.
Right. In case people don't know. Yeah. We know. We know.
I was reading some article in like the Atlantic or something where this guy was blaming. There was some article in in Wall Street Journal about how BlackRock is like buying up all this real estate, and then some guy like wrote a rebuttal in the Atlantic that was like, "It's not the big bank's fault; it's NIMBY's fault."
Oh wow! Are you serious?
Wow. Well, so it seems to me that the city is these seem like sustainable development goals that are kind of coming into play here from the UN. And for those of you who don't know, these are the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They're part of like a very broad worldwide project of greening the planet, but also helping people and things of that nature. And it's all framed in progressive language, but it's really doing the opposite of what they're saying it's going to do. It's going to destroy communities. It's going to take away infrastructure, and it's going to hurt people, I think, in the long run. And it's going to flatten
create monoculture.
Thank you. And that's something that's the opposite of what the run seems to be. And I think that's the opposite of like what like I said at the beginning of this, Pittsburgh is a city of neighborhoods, and they all have very distinct characteristics about them. And I'll just put in my 2 cents about like I was also one of those people who was driving down 376 looking down and thinking, wow,
What
where
is
is
that
that?
play?
You know, because there's this huge church there.
Right.
Yeah, it's
that-
really nice.
The
That's in the
church is-
video too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what wasn't that something that like
Andy Warhol's, that
his
was
family?
his family church when he was growing up. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I mean, there's that kind of contextual history there, but all over Pittsburgh, it feels like a lot of the infrastructure has been let go.
Oh, yeah.
And blight has occurred. I mean, and I've been all over this city and I've seen it,
Mhm.
and it sort of feels like what they're doing to the run is what they're doing to a lot of places in Pittsburgh, and that is like benign neglect and
Right.
letting go of the infrastructure in order for to kind of nudge people out of these areas so that they can then redevelop them into something that's not neighborhood oriented, that's not people oriented, but corporate.
That's definitely been happening. I'm glad you brought up the whole green thing. I definitely want to say something about that.
Yeah.
But before I forget, I mean, this is definitely not unique to the run, as you said. But just for example, some of my neighbors told me, like, we got our main street repaved a few years ago, but before that, it had been 34 years. My neighbor said before
Oh my God.
before they even did that.
Wow.
And it's already, I mean, my street's full of potholes, and they put down like their little Band-Aids, and they're
Yeah.
gone by the next year.
That's everywhere in Pittsburgh, especially here in our neighborhood.
Yeah. Oh, well, so I'm glad you brought up the green
The
thing,
sustainable development
because
goals
I
and-
was when I was preparing to come here, I was thinking about, because I know you guys usually do sort of bigger, broader issues, and I was thinking, well, there's obvious overlap, but I was trying to come up with like sort of the points. Where does this overlap exactly? And one of the things I was thinking about was this whole greenwashing thing. Like they're selling this project as environmentally friendly. It's a way to get people out of their cars, and that's what they're really pushing. And then if you're against that, you're just this stick in the mud, and you're afraid of change, and you want meanwhile, just like in so many other cities, my one neighbor talks about the streetcar system that used to be here.
Mhm.
That was apparently, it was run by a bunch of different private companies at one time, but the streetcar system was amazing, and they ripped it out. And now, you're attached to this car culture or whatever. No, it's not that at all. That's not why we're opposed to this.
Yeah.
They want these scooters. We had this discussion about these scooters. They want to have people like riding their scooters up and down this thing along with their little people pod movers. These scooters that get just like tossed everywhere, and they're cheap, so they end up in the landfill, and that's environmentally friendly. So
Right.
there's a big greenwashing element to this too.
Absolutely. And the scooters that she's talking about, I mean, this was going on in San Francisco years ago, even before we moved to Pittsburgh. And they're electric scooters, and you rent them, so they're private, and they're what they call undocked. So when you're done riding it, you just leave it where you don't want to go. So you got to the store that you want to go to, you just leave it there. And whether you pick it up again or not is up to you. Maybe you pick up another scooter. It's not yours. You just rented it for that moment, and then it gets left behind. But the problem is they're very lightweight. They're very cheaply made, and they, as you mentioned, and they once they fall apart, they'll just basically end up in landfill. Plus, all the batteries that are used to make these things are very harmful to the environment. And so you have plastic production, you have the batteries, and all the other like pieces that go into that. And it's a very unnecessary product for a very unnecessary purpose.
Right.
It's not transit at all,
No.
and
even
yet they treat it that way.
Even their monorail. I keep calling it the monorail because I think of that guy from
Monorail.
exactly
From The Simpsons, right?
But even that, that has obsolescence built into it. So that also strikes me as very wasteful. When they know they're like building up to this huge numbers of people, and they're going to have to expand, but they want to start off with this little tiny thing, and so they have to make all this crap to fulfill the illusion that it's just going to be this this peaceful little quiet ride through the park. It'll be like, you know, like one of those trains in an amusement park,
Now,
I guess, or
is
something.
it going to be raised above the neighborhood?
It's going to just go right through. So there's a bike path there right now.
Uh-huh.
And if you're familiar with that part of the park,
A little bit, yeah.
so it actually did used to be a road. And that's what people will say all the time. Well, it used to be a road. It can be a road again. Well, the road was closed because of landslides. So that's another thing we have going on. I mean, that's also not an uncommon thing in Pittsburgh, though. So it's not like we're unique that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, the road was shut down because of landslides, like I think in the 80s or something. And then, you know, eventually the city officially annexed it as part of Shenley Park, and that became a bike path. And now it's pretty cool because like they talk about connections between Oakland and downtown, which are the two major job centers in Pittsburgh. And that is a way for pedestrian, I mean, theoretically pedestrians, but it's a lot faster if you're on a bike. So mainly cyclists to get between these two very busy, dense, high traffic areas without having to compete with cars on the road. And you see, I don't know if this is elsewhere in the country, but you see these white bikes. They have the white, the bikes painted white, where you see them all over Oakland, where people have gotten creamed by cars. And so this is a way for cyclists to avoid that fate. And now they want to put shuttles on that road, which are basically minivan like size vehicles. And right now and you know, I mean, like people already ride their scooters up and down there, but this is, you know, like having these cars on there basically.
So is it going to go, is this path or whatever for these vehicles, is it going to go right through your neighborhood?
Yes.
And then onto the Second Avenue?
So for now, and we're sort of, because they're not very transparent, we're sort of doing a lot of guesswork here. We have this email chain on our blog where it's just like us asking Domi and the Almano partners different emails, just like, can you tell us what the route is once it dumps out at the end of the path in the park? Like, where does it go? Because it's just city streets. Like they'll say, oh, it just takes the streets. Okay, well, where does it go? And they won't tell us.
Weird.
Yeah.
And then one of their plans is they say that phase 2 of this thing, and this is, they sort of lied. I have to go back a little bit. Maybe I shouldn't get into that whole story, but basically the whole, like they were telling us because of the landslides that were on that hill that closed the road in the first place. Oh, we can't use the route where there's a road up the hill from that park that is already a road where shuttle buses and, you know, big vehicles go up and down there all the time. And they said, oh, we can't use that because of the landslides and we can't widen the road because the soil conditions are too fragile. So then in their latest plans, they have this little offshoot of the road at the bottom of near the end of the road in the park that goes like up that hill, that very same hill that is prone to landslides, and joins up with that very same road that they told us they couldn't use because of the fragile soil conditions, and widens the road and joins up with it right before it goes over that bridge that's falling apart that they would like to widen. Why would they want to do that instead of just repair it? Oh, to have a dedicated lane for the shuttles and get all these people out of their houses and my local pub.
Yeah, right. So it sounds to me like there's a lot of different factions that might be playing for power in City Hall over this thing. This sounds like a political football in a lot of ways.
It's a hot potato.
Yeah,
sort of.
but it also sounds like a corporate, you know, public-private partnership boondoggle, right? To where it's like there's money to be made and it doesn't matter if anything actually gets accomplished, which is, you know, something that we talk about all the time. It doesn't matter if, like, for instance, when we were talking about all the testing sites that were going on last year, and you know, they set up these big, you know, tents and things in parking lots and outside of hospitals, and nobody ever went to them. And what we were talking about is that this was all the result of impact investments, where money was put into, you know, supporting this thing. The organizations, the suppliers would supply the people and the tents and the medical supplies and all this stuff, and all this money got spent. The investors got their money back because the government kicked in the funds, and they got funding from other sources. So the investors got their money and a bigger return on it. Nothing was accomplished, but they were able to say that something was accomplished by the supplies were delivered, the tents were set up, the personnel were on site, and it doesn't matter if anyone got tested or not. Right. The thing can be checked off and put on their dashboard, their ledger and their dashboard, in order to say, this was accomplished. It was all accounting, exactly. And so now our investors can make money, and
Success.
Let's just do it again. And that sounds exactly like what's going on with what's happening with your neighborhood.
There's an example, just so that people don't think that there isn't a history of this kind of like a term you used earlier, planned obsolescence. Tell us about the parking lot that was once. Okay.
Yeah,
So
thank you for. I definitely did not want to let the whole show go by without mentioning that it is definitely, nobody in my neighborhood is unaware of Pittsburgh history and thinks that, our neighborhood is unique.
To this problem.
This is a historical Pittsburgh problem. I mean, as I'm sure it is in many other places.
Many large cities, yeah.
But I mean, so we have there's a neighborhood in Pittsburgh called the Hill District, and it's sort of divided into two parts, the upper and lower, because of our topography.
Just to interrupt real quick, just for people out there, I think it's one of the closest neighborhoods to downtown.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's right there. And so, it's prime real estate. So I'm trying to remember it was before my time, but so we had this. I remember as a kid growing up, I used to go, I think I saw Sesame Street live at the Civic Arena. Yeah. So, but to build that Civic Arena, they just tore out the whole Lower Hill District and displaced and now that is a predominantly Black neighborhood. And this, it's longstanding, and it's happened more recently in East Liberty. This is something that is a problem all over our city. It seems like we're losing more and more Black residents every day. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. And so it's a much larger problem than just what I'm dealing with in my neighborhood. I just happen to be where I am, and
right. So the Hill District is close to downtown. East Liberty is further out away, and it's closer to the Oakland area, I suppose. Yeah. And just to fill everybody in, East Liberty is where Google and a lot of new tech companies have been moving in, that translation company.
Oh, Duolingo.
Yeah. So a lot of tech companies are moving into that area. New condos, and I'm sure our San Francisco or people who are from California know that. These new ugly condos get put in, people get displaced, if not physically, economically, for certainly. This is where the Trader Joe's is. This is where the Whole Foods is, or close to it. And so these are the kind of gentrification things that are taking place in these neighborhoods. Now, that's the one neighborhood where gentrification is thoroughly taking hold in Pittsburgh. In the Hill District, it's not so much. It's more about just doing whatever there. I mean, there's the Penguins.
Yeah. Well, they're working on it. I mean, they actually held off construction. I think they held off so they could get that opportunity zone thing, which I don't know all the details of, but that's really bizarre to me.
Right. So just really quickly. So the Lower Hill District was a neighborhood,
a thriving neighborhood,
close to downtown. They leveled it. All of those people had to scatter to the winds and find new places to live. They leveled it to build the Civic Arena. Yeah. And then what happened to the Civic Arena?
And then that got torn down. And it was a parking lot for the longest time.
So you went from a thriving neighborhood to a parking lot.
In a matter of 40, 50 years?
Yeah. And, and over that time you had investments made in, in people, in union jobs and people. It was like busy work. It seems like ultimately at the end of the day, after 50 years, it's just busy work because all you have is a parking lot. And now they want to turn that parking lot, which was once a thriving neighborhood, into an opportunity zone.
Yeah, they want
right?
to do more development on it. I think it's like probably mixed use, but the last design site, like I said, I'm not really totally filled in on the details of that, but it looks like another one of those big developer paradise things.
If it is an opportunity zone,
but they actually got there's that public source article. Yeah, they actually got that boundary of the opportunity zone expanded so that would be in the opportunity zone as part of the Upper Hill District, I think.
Okay, so for people who aren't aware, like JP and I live in an opportunity zone, and what it is, it feels like this is a very generic description of an opportunity zone. It basically is a tax haven right in your own backyard, like right in your own country. So it used to be that billionaires, especially tech billionaires, would throw their money into tax havens, in Panama or, overseas somewhere, and you would never know about it. Now what they do is they create these neighborhoods to sort of hide their money and invest their money in for the sake of making money. Nobody benefits from living in an opportunity zone. Least of all the people who live and rent here. Right. There's usually a lot of Section 8 in opportunity zones. There's no access to things that people really need, like green grocers or parks.
Oftentimes it's sort of like they're the sort of boondoggle projects, like what we're talking about here, where they're investing in infrastructure that really doesn't benefit anybody except for maybe the class of people who are pushing for it in the first place, right?
But all the boxes got checked.
Yeah, and all the boxes got checked.
Like you said. And I mean, in East Liberty, right now you have all these like luxury apartments and retail office space that are just sitting empty.
Right.
Because, and I guess it's like, it doesn't really matter if anybody can actually afford
That's correct.
To go in there. If they just sit, they checked all the boxes and they built the building so they can just sit there.
Right.
And they won't lower the rent to allow people to actually be able to be there. It's
because that's the frosting on top.
Right.
They already made their money with it.
Right.
So they don't need to invest any more money into getting people in there. If people want to rent there, that's fine, but they're not going to market it much more than that.
Taking it back to your neighborhood, do you see any visible signs of this so-called progress that you've been fighting in order to maintain the structure of your neighborhood? Do you see any signs of it every day? Do you see construction going on? Like, what do you see in your neighborhood that might indicate that it might be happening?
Well, up until this point, we definitely see more and more just like random people coming down and definitely seeming to scope out properties and like on their cell phones with somebody. And now the latest is that so the whole PWSA debacle, they had to file a joint permit application. They don't have that. They had to file with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They sent back a technical deficiency letter, and a lot of the comments were identifying issues that were surrounding this MOC, the road. Like all these questions about how this road was going to affect, and is PWSA, since they're the ones signing, are they responsible for it, and all this stuff. Well, so they actually, today is the PWSA's deadline to respond to that technical deficiency letter. But in the meantime, they sent us down in the run a letter that said, well, we don't have the permit, but People's Natural Gas is going to come in on Thursday, this coming Thursday, and start moving the gas lines as part of this project that they don't have the permit for. So, and they sent us this tiny little map in the letter of that we, you can't even read, that says where it's going to be. And so I sort of, I bothered the PWSA. I pick on them a lot.
Good.
For good reason. Once again, at their monthly board meeting, I said, hey, I have some questions about this. And I want you to answer them before you start construction on this. Yeah, I'm sad that there's none of the text from the letter, but that is part of the letter. But if some of the words from that letter were in there, you could see just how small that is. But
Right.
Mhm.
But what you were describing to me earlier, and we didn't have access to the letter, but this image that we're seeing here, and I'll make it larger. This letter this image that we're seeing of this map is of the run, but it's really minuscule. It's basically like, like this tiny little bit down at the very bottom
it's like
of the letter,
a third
right?
of the page of one side of the page of that letter.
Wow. Wow.
So I don't know. It's kind of crazy. And it was dated July 9th, and they said they're going to start construction on the 29th. So visible signs I've seen, like I see the stuff. Well, I mean, I've been seeing for a while them spraying stuff on the streets and sidewalks, like marking things where utilities are and stuff.
Right.
And now I see like a fresh set. And now we're starting to see like the people's natural gas trucks coming around. Like they're just going to go ahead with it, but they haven't even really clarified that they're actually allowed to do this, because how can they do it if it's part of this project that doesn't have a permit?
Right.
Right. Well, again, I think this comes down to the busy work that Julie was talking about, where, again, money is paid for this construction, and it's like, well, they either do it or they don't, but they've got to show some sort of signs of progress in order to check that box, right? I mean, we had a situation here last December where, we had just had our street paved for gas lines to be put in. So after they were done with the work, they paved it over. Well, don't you know, our neighbor next door had low pressure gas or some weird shit that,
Didn't make any
it didn't make any sense. So they had to send, this is a different gas company, but they had to send out a crew to dig it up. And when we went out there and started watching them and asked questions, and then Julie pulled out her phone to record, they stopped working.
Yeah. They became very aggressive. It was like dealing with the mob.
Wow, that's
Right.
weird.
It was really weird. And,
Well,
and
that's
so-
because it wasn't. It goes into this planned obsolescence. Like it's just busy work for the sake of busy work. It's like 50 years of let's tear down a neighborhood, build an arena, tear down the arena, have a parking lot. It's just work for the sake of work.
Right.
It's and unlike in San Francisco, where when there are construction projects, when the roads are torn up and then they're put back together for whatever reason, they give you like a notice on your door that says from this time on this date and from this time on this date, there will be an interruption to your life in some way, traffic, cycling, whatever. And you can set your clock to it and they're done. But here, it took forever. They remember how it was like we were trying to record video essays and trying to do our work because we work out of our home in our studio, and we would have to stop our recording, for months in between construction work outside our front door. They don't tell you, they don't give you any warning that they're coming. They don't tell you when it's done, and then when it finally is done, they come back and rip it up again.
Right.
And when you confront them, they get aggressive
Right.
and mean.
And
So-
and the patch job that they did, and I'm sure you can confirm this in your case, the patch job that they did on this freshly paved road that they had to dig up is just crap. It's just like, it's lumpy and it's awful, and it's like they just made it back to where it was before.
Right.
Yeah.
So it seems like what you're dealing with the run is this project that is going to take a long time based on Pittsburgh's own record and based on what I've experienced, personally from how they do construction work and stuff. It's going to take a long time to put in this tram, this so-called autonomous vehicle, which will only hold like 8 people.
And then there's the stormwater thing.
And then the stormwater
even
thing.
though, I mean, like theoretically, like obviously we need work to be done to address that issue. Both things are highly disruptive
Right.
because, so another thing about the run is that there is one road that goes in and out of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're doing work on that road, and that that is going to be a significant disruption.
Yeah.
So
Well, it also sounds like the flood work is also sort of like a carrot that they're dangling.
well, yeah, that's
Right.
exactly it. They've sort of tied, like I said, that was not even under discussion until they sort of got caught out, because there was video footage of just how bad it was. I mean, that's been happening for years, and they
Right.
always claimed they had no funds to fix it, but they were already talking about this road. Then suddenly it's revealed, oh, gee, this is a public safety issue, and they had to come up with something. So I guess like the city actually told PWSA go out and like get some money to fix this, and they did. But most of it isn't even, but that whole project, the problem with it is that it's not designed primarily to address the flooding. And in fact, in some of these meetings they were having that we got the notes from, like it was sold to us, when it came out, oh, PWSA got this $41 million to fix the flooding. That's how it was presented to us. But then as time went on and it became, well, I mean, we were saying the whole time, this is, tied to it's sort of like they're carrying water, pardon the pun, for the Mont Oakland Connector project.
Mhm.
So that's, I mean, so when that became apparent, they were talking in these meetings about, well, we have to, work on the messaging and get people to understand that this isn't going to totally solve their flooding problem. It's just going to improve it.
Oh,
And it's
my
like,
God.
gee, maybe it's because you're not even working in an area where most of the flooding comes from.
Right.
And you just, it happens to be in this area where you want to put this road. And
Mm.
the stormwater project is designed around the road. They kept speaking out of both sides of their mouth. We
Right.
kept asking them, well, is it the same project or are they two separate projects? And they kept saying two separate projects. But then they started bidding, for construction like this, the same.
So one can't happen without the
Yeah.
other.
And they did this dual permit application so that if they get this permit approved, that and they said, well, we'll just, if the Mont Oakland Connector doesn't happen, then we'll just go ahead without it. But it's the same design and it doesn't do anything really for our flooding. I mean, it addresses some other issues like PWSA is, I mean, a lot of places around here, I guess, are sort of running afoul of the law by having these illegal combined sewer overflows everywhere. And so it checks some of those boxes. And I guess, it gets them on the right side of, these laws, these environmental laws, but it's sort of a technicality and it doesn't really address the actual health and safety issue. And by the way, last time it flooded, the city, after 2 or 3 days, they sent street sweepers around, but there was no hosing down of the, I mean, our neighborhood smelled like shit for a few days after that last flood.
Literally.
Yeah.
Oh
Wow.
my God.
It was disgusting.
Yeah.
And I mean, the one guy
I'm
who
so sorry.
works at the bar down there, he was the one out there with the power washer spraying down the sidewalks and
Right.
stuff. It's up to us.
Right,
To do the
right.
cleanup, right.
And I'd like to kind of close out the broadcast with that comment right there. It's up to us. One thing I did learn when I first moved to Pittsburgh nearly 3 years ago now is that a lot of people are like Zig, where they're just taking on the personal responsibility and doing what they have to do to make sure that the conditions in their neighborhoods are livable. For San Franciscans who have everything immediately fixed
Mhm.
and covered, because of such the high tax bracket there, it's kind of this unheard of, philosophy is to actually get out there and do it yourself. I think the most innovative autonomous kind of thing that you might see happening in San Francisco is, the millionaire who lives in her Victorian will take her little plot of land and plant flowers in it.
Right.
And that's about, and that's really all you get there, because the infrastructure is so sound and so good. And all the utility companies are working well together. Everybody's getting paid. It works,
Yeah.
But it was kind of shocking for me. It was definitely a shock to my system to hear the locals in Pittsburgh and in my neighborhood say, you know, look, if we want to get something done, we've got to haul our own trash, or, you know, spray down the
sewage.
sewage. It's like, wow,
Yeah.
that's a completely, and I think that that's where we're headed, people. I think that this is what we have to accept, that this is our new reality.
Right. You know, and I think
You've got to take responsibility. You've got
Yeah.
to get in front of your municipality and know your stuff the way she does, as much work as she does to, you know, to make sure that her infrastructure is sound and everything. She also does a lot of research, and she finds out about the public-private partnerships
Mhm.
that are behind all of this and all the money that's behind this. And she confronts the municipalities about that. We have to take that same kind of responsibility. It's not exciting. It's not glamorous. It's kind of boring, but it's necessary, or else you're going to lose your neighborhood.
Right. And I think, you know, that this falls into the area of, you know, collective autonomy, right? So on one hand, it feels like the government, the city government, and, you know, these public-private partnerships are trying to take away your neighborhood's autonomy, your collective autonomy, as well as your individual autonomy, right? By you know, shutting you out or pushing you out, or doing something that makes it difficult for you to have a life and a good quality of life. But at the same time, it affords you that opportunity to then band together as a collective group to take back your collective autonomy as a neighborhood and establish that culture that has grown up there, even more so by, you know, standing up to them like you did, whether that's going to help anything or not. But also to the point that, you know, you guys were talking about, where, you know, somebody takes the initiative to you know, power wash the streets to get rid of the stench that was the result of bad infrastructure and the neglect that takes place all throughout the country, right? And but especially in some of these pockets in some of these neighborhoods, and certainly we see that here. And, you know, it's up to the people who live in these enclaves to you know, take back that autonomy, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
And I will say, the more people there are doing it, the easier it is. When there are just a few people, I'm certainly not the only person doing it, but really, the more people are doing it, the easier it is, because everybody's piece gets a little smaller.
Right.
If it's just you laboring under this giant, never-ending mess of stuff, then it gets to feel really discouraging after a while.
Yeah.
So the more people you can get together, the better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And when it's, you know, when it's horizontal like that too, it feels more effective, right?
Mhm.
You know, 'cause
Yeah.
then you're not like, you know, putting your hope in a leader, or placing it all on, you know, somebody who's like taking charge.
Yeah.
And then you don't feel bossed around either.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just like, I mean, I sort of feel like the ideal situation is just identify the problems and decide together what you have to do to get it done, and decide who's going to do what and get it done.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, there's another video out there that we produced about a year ago, and it's me reading from the local sewage company, which they put out a little flyer or pamphlet that came to us in the mail. It was a marketing piece, and they're talking about what they're planning to do, and a lot of it sounds like, you know, sustainable development goals, and you know, setting up green infrastructure and things like that. Oh, okay. Well, we'll get to that comment in a second. But you know, so it's called Sewer Talk, and it came out about a year ago. So look for that on YouTube. It's called Sewer Talk. Any last thoughts or places to? We'll get to comments in a second. But where can people find out more? And how can they help?
Okay. Well, the number one thing you can do to help, I'm assuming most of your audience doesn't live in Pittsburgh, or
Right, the petition. I don't have it here, but
Oh, I emailed it to you to.
okay. Well, I don't have it up, so I'm sorry.
Oh, that's too bad.
okay. Well, so we have oh no, there it is. You got
There it is.
it.
Do I have it?
Okay.
It's the tab next to Facebook.
Okay, hang on just a second, and let me share that. Oh my gosh. Okay. So sorry.
I don't know what it is.
That's the Junction Coalition.
Our money, our solutions.
Our money, our solutions. Oh,
There
okay. I
we go.
showed that a moment ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's-
there's our petition.
Yay.
You can, I mean, I wouldn't ask you to sign something you didn't read. So you can read it, certainly, you know, read it. This is, so like I said, we had some meetings. Pittsburghers for Public Transit helped us. I have to give them credit. They sort of helped us get people from different neighborhoods together, and we all worked together to come up with this plan. And this is all the things we're talking about in this plan. I think they would be right around the budget for the Mount Oakland connector, which is $23 million, which they have. And they've just been letting 14 million of it from 2018 and 2019 sit there. And I mean, I'm sure they're spending it on, like, you know, consultants or whatever, but so this isn't like money that we're asking people to, you know, pull out of their butts or anything. Or, you know, it's coming from the sky. This is money that has already been set aside for a project that is not going to benefit our communities that they're doing this work in. So we're asking for these other things that would benefit our communities, including Hazelwood, including Panther Hollow, which we didn't really talk about a lot, but that's the other neighborhood. And I forgot to mention Hazelwood is also an opportunity zone.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure it is.
So there you go.
So that would be like the easiest thing you could possibly do to help us, even if you live in Alaska or whatever.
Yeah. Well, we'll put that link on the show notes for YouTube and hopefully also Facebook, but
Yeah,
so definitely
everywhere.
on YouTube,
Yeah.
everywhere we can, because some of our platforms only allow so many characters.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But on YouTube, we'll definitely put those links
Cool.
in there. Yeah.
Okay. Go
Okay.
ahead.
And what else? I mean, you know, if you're in Pittsburgh, you know, these guys know how to get in touch with me. So drop me a line. One of the things that I didn't really, like, the time goes by so fast. We had a good conversation, but
Mhm.
one of the things I didn't really get too deep into is that these foundations that own the development site are really sort of into everything. And it's hard for us to find like good legal help.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you need legal
So we
help.
need some advice, not necessarily, you know, a lawyer, but maybe just some feedback on that. And and if you're in
Okay.
Pittsburgh, you know, drop me a line, and if you want to help.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
And
great.
yeah, you can get in touch with Zig through us. So info@book-of-hours.com,
Sure.
or leave comments. There are some comments here. Undefined JB left 3 comments. So let's see, we got, so the microphone. So this is a new setup for us. And this is the microphone that we use for our voiceovers. And it's not necessarily great for our broadcast, but it
it's
sounds
okay,
great
I
in the
guess.
middle.
Oh,
Okay.
so could people hear us?
So it looks like it. Yeah.
Okay.
So can hear well with it in the middle.
Okay.
I think that's what she meant.
Okay.
Also,
They
you're-
meant, yeah.
this person, you're closing down the broadcast, but my comment is, it always comes down to who's going to pay for it,
Right.
you know. And that's true. The state is totally ineffective in handling the basic necessities, and we already
That's
pay for
true.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
true.
We're already
Yeah.
paying for that, and they're not doing it. And it kind
Exactly.
of makes you wonder, well, where is it going then?
Yeah.
Well, so what happens? What is it when? Okay, boys and girls, what is it when you pay? When the state and corporations combine and you don't benefit? What's it called again?
It starts with an F.
Starts with an F.
It's the F.
Can I buy a vowel?
Right. So we're living in fashion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Wow. All right. Well,
Is that
with-
That's the secret word.
that's the PB right? Exactly. That's the secret word. We've come to yet another
Edition of
edition of
Bookmark.
Bookmark. Yeah.
Hooray. This was so fun. Thanks for
Oh,
having
we're
me, you
so
guys.
glad that you came.
Yeah.
Yes, you're such a delight, and we're really glad that we had a chance to meet you, and we're glad that you reached out. And
And I felt
Yeah.
like as you were telling us about this situation, I felt like even though it's a hyper local situation in your case, again, this is something that we see all over the world, and especially all over the United States, with crumbling infrastructure And, we've been hearing about this for years. I mean, I even remember in my, my hardcore NPR listening days that they were talking about how, big city sewer systems were 100 years old, and they only had maybe 10 years left to exist. And this was over 10 years ago. So not much has been done to fix these things.
I think that, and then we'll end the show, but I think that what people are missing is that there's a whole country in between San Francisco and New York.
Yeah.
And you saw it when you traveled from, the 3,000 miles to get here in the truck, and you're like, what happened to the United States?
Right.
And this has been years and years in the making, and now people are really starting to say, wait a minute, we need to reverse this. 100-year-old sewage systems that haven't been upgraded.
Right.
Come on. I mean, we're headed into a Dickens novel, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So there's already, cases of hookworm in Alabama. That's not, is that what you pay your taxes for? Is that the kind of progress that you want? And it's all going to be done under the, the terms of progress and development and community, which you don't benefit from any of that.
Right.
So
exactly.
Anyway.
Well, I guess it's the box checking, it's like, we're going to do this great thing. We're going to fix it. Actually, well, I don't want to go down another rabbit hole, but look into PWSA and Veolia. That was this private company they hired to, help them a few years back. And it ended up that they were cutting corners, and we ended up with a bunch of, they did something to the pipes where it was like releasing all this lead into the water.
Nice.
So we had a big problem.
They're a big corporation, and that's like one of the things they do is water systems and purification of water. And yet look at what they did.
And yet, So, okay.
Wow.
Well, guys, this has been a cautionary tale. Thank you for joining us on Bookmark.
Yeah.
And please join us tomorrow when we have Hervoje Morik, who is the host for Geopolitics and Empire. We're going to have a great conversation with another content creator talking about some of the big picture stuff. So you don't want to miss that. That's for our next pull quote.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see you next time. Thank you, Zig.
Thank you,
guys.
All right.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Book of Hours are artists here to empower and embolden your response to the constant negative sound bites that attack your news and social media feeds. In order to continue making the video essays and art you've come to enjoy, we need your support. Make a one-time donation or become a patron. Thank you.